post that link. Let's just go to Studio. And it looks like it's live. And I'll just post that in the materials channel. Figure out where that got to. There it is. Okay. Let me go there. And let me do this. Sorry, I've been a little busy this morning. I had another student needing some support. There we go. Okay, so welcome to yet another installment of Capstone 1. And I was just looking, I've only seen one draft proposal come in, and that's okay. I do want to do some work on all of your proposals, and I've been caught a little flat-footed because next week we don't have a class, and the week after that I would like you to present your proposals. So I need to talk about both putting together the proposal and presenting them. What I'm going to do though is I suggest that the actual written proposal not be due until after you've made your presentations, right? The proposal presentation and the document should contain the same information, but I suspect you might get some feedback excuse me, on your proposals during your presentation, either from me or from other class members. Okay, so that will give you a chance to take that feedback and update your proposal document before you make your final submission. Okay, so let's see where we are. And like I said, I only realized it sort of crept up on me that we have a Good Friday break on Friday next week. So we have to both prepare the proposal and also prepare the concept review, which is aimed at presenting the proposal. So I thought we should revisit what's happening in the whole Capstone 1 and Capstone 2 process, and this is really the aim, right? The first part, what we've been doing up until now, is the concept development. We have lots of ideas. We want to narrow down those lots of ideas to a few good ones, and then we want to reduce the uncertainty in what we're proposing by writing it down and working with others, so that everybody has the same idea about what we're hopefully going to end up with come December. So we've done the project relevance statement, we've done the elevator pitch, we're currently working on the written proposal, and then in 2 weeks' time I'll get you all to present your proposals. So that's all about the what. Okay, what are we going to build? Once we've completed that, then we need to shift gears a bit and start thinking about how. And how is more about the technology. We still probably don't have enough information to actually buy stuff, right? So I would hold off on ordering anything. I have like I said in the capstone materials, I think I said last week, I have some leftover devices from last semester's capstone 2 students, and I've sent out what the two of the Raspberry Pi 3s to one to the home security group, I think, and one to the fridge automation group, I think. So they were all the Raspberry Pi 3s I had. I still have Raspberry Pi 0Ws, which are tinier devices, but they're kind of cool. They are still a Raspberry Pi, so they do, you can run nice things on them, but they're tiny. But the nice thing about them is they have a Wi-Fi connection, and that makes them a little bit more useful than the standard Raspberry Pi Zero, which are just you have to connect up via USB to talk to them. The only downside of the Raspberry Pi W is that they don't have as much I/O as the Raspberry Pi Zero W don't have as much I/O as the Raspberry Pi 3s do. The reason I gave those out is because one of the things we need to do next is to figure out exactly whether our ideas about how to do this are correct. So having the device is a nice way of checking to see whether what we thought was feasible is actually feasible. And there's no cost because we had the, rather no extra cost because we already had the devices. As I said, I think I still have 3 Raspberry Pi 0Ws and 3 Arduinos. I don't discount those Arduinos. They're what they may be useful for is putting together a smarter sensor for connection to a bigger computer like a Raspberry Pi. So maybe think about that. So once we have finished this semester, we should have a preliminary design. We should know what are the pieces of hardware that we have to order. We should know what are the pieces of software that we have to write. We should know what we're going to write it in, whether it's Python or C or assembler. And then when we come back from the summer break, then we need to start putting it all together. It's still not going to be complete in that next prototyping and detailed design because we still need to, even though by the end of this semester we'll know what software we need to write, we probably won't have time to design it. So we need to design the software, if there is any software, we need to design it in the first part of next semester, and we need to make sure all of our hardware is hanging together the way we expect it to. In between, in here, right, that's going to be summer. And the first 2 cohorts of capstone students that I've taken through all had good intentions of doing something over the summer. And mostly it didn't happen. So I would caution you in your plan to make sure that you don't have anything penciled in there that is critical for being done over the summer. I'm not saying you won't. Some people get a bug and and really get into it and do stuff over the summer. If there is something over the summer that you think you might do, what I'd suggest is have it be more to do with research and reading and background, rather than necessarily designing hardware, designing software. And then the second half of the fall semester, the aim is we actually pull it all together and do it. And by about week 11, maybe 10, you should be pretty much finished with certainly the hardware, maybe the software, and we should be on the ramp down to presenting your final designs. From here on in, all of your work is going to be done as a team. So all of the outputs you can see on the screen now: written proposal, proposal presentation, preliminary design, doc and presentation, program review 1, detailed design, doc and presentation, and program review 2, and final design, doc and presentation, and a working prototype. They're all going to be done as a team. I am going to be taking periodic peer reviews, and I'm going to make it really simple. From after Easter, each week, I'm going to ask all of you to give your teammates a +1, a -1, or a 0. And we'll just see how it goes. Usually what happens is at the beginning everyone's a +1, and sometimes things happen, and somebody falls off the radar for a bit. Like I said, things happen, and in that case you probably should get a 0, right, if you're not contributing. The only time I would expect anybody to get a -1 is if there's a serious either personal problem or some other reason I might have to get involved. Okay, so but we'll see. I have a more complicated way of doing peer assessment, but I think it's a little too complicated, and I usually only do it once in a semester. So rather than be complicated and have it do once, I'm going to make it simple and get you to do it, like I said, on a weekly basis after we get back from the Easter break. Okay, and just to be clear, I will probably use that information in order to adjust individual marks on group work. Okay, I don't expect to, but sometimes things happen. The other thing that I am not quite sure how to manage it is occasionally during a week a team member of yours will go above and beyond, and I would like to recognize when that happens. I'd like the team to recognize when that happens. So I might see about adding another question about that. Okay, any thoughts concerns, comments about what I've spoken about so far? No? Okay.
Will those be just on polls in Discord, or we would do those over Blackboard?
So for me, Blackboard's a bit clunky. Um,
Yeah.
and I think what I'm going to do is just set up a Google form,
Oh, that
and
makes sense. Yeah.
right, and that way you just click and it's done,
All
right?
right. Makes more sense. Yeah. Thank you.
Um, yeah. So I may set it up so that you need a Google account. I don't know whether that's going to be a problem, because I would like to make sure I know who's who and where's where. What I'll probably do is do it on a per team basis and just send all team members the same list. That will mean that you should give yourself a rating as well, right? So if you think you're doing fine, then you give yourself a 1. If you think you haven't been contributing, you give yourself a 0.
All right.
Okay,
Yep. Thank you.
you're welcome. Despite appearances, some of this stuff I am making up as I go along, right? I've done this a few times, right? So it's not coming out of thin air, but I've only started doing peer assessments recently, and while I've found them to be useful, I haven't figured out the right way to, or for me, the right way to do it yet. I used them last semester in the courses I was teaching at Fairfield, and I used an approach that a Fairfield professor uses, and it was actually pretty good. It was just a little bit heavyweight to do every week, and I want to do it a little bit more regularly. So I'm thinking having a lightweight approach might be better. Okay, sorry about that. I realise it's not really contributing to getting the capstone stuff forward, but I thought it would be good to have a bit of a pause and see where we are and what we have to do. Okay, I haven't changed this diagram. We're basically on the cusp down here, going from the concept development stage into preliminary design. That boundary there is your proposal, and this approach is what a lot of particularly larger companies do. They have a very systematic approach to product development, and they have what's called a stage gated approach. I've forgotten the Lockheed has a particular name for it. I've forgotten what it's called now. What used to be called United Technologies is now Raytheon Technologies. They have a thing called the passport process, or the PDP, product development process, and again, it's a stage gated. Both of those processes, the ones that I know about, are much more complex than what we're doing. The reason it's more complex is they have lots more stuff happening, and not only do they have to build something, they have to build something that their customers want. So they have a couple of phases after the product is developed, where they pilot the product with a customer. In software, you'd call that maybe beta testing, and then they have an initial 1-year rollout to check that the customers that are getting the new product are okay. But it's basically the same idea as what we're doing. Professor Broderick has worked in that process before. He used to work for Triumph Engine Controls, and they have a similar process. Again, more complicated because we're just doing the engineering piece. If you're doing a product development, you've got to have marketing, sales, legal, finance, the C-suite, potentially HR. You've got to have all of those people involved, and it gets more complicated because you might have to hire people to do it, right? You might want to file patents. You get legal involved. You need a business analyst involved because you as an engineer, you may be able to generate a business model, but you need somebody with a more of a business analyst's mind to go through and validate what you've done and get it say that yes, this is going to be an accurate reflection of how we're going to make money out of this thing. Okay, so that's what we're doing, and they're our project ideas. Now, I just before this, I had a look at the Blackboard, and I only saw one document. Let's see if I can find it. I think I just downloaded it. Right, so I think this is the home security one. I don't know if anybody else has uploaded it. Right, so and I forgot to append the template to the assignments. I only did that last night. I apologize for that. Right, so this is the aim of this is to the aim of the project proposal is to make sure that everybody knows what we're doing and why we're doing it. And so the stuff we've done so far, the functional requirements, the cross-functional requirements, the use case diagram needs to be here. The piece that we maybe haven't done as much of is you really need to justify why this is a good project idea, right? And the aim in the statement of needs section is to put some numbers, put some data behind why you're doing it. And I think the project description here is good. The goal of this project is to design a functional home security drone that will patrol inaccessible areas and notify security system owners. Right? It's a nice high level goal for the project. And then the functional requirements and non-functional requirements. I think I've said before, try not to mention the technology specifically, even though we probably are going to use a Raspberry Pi. Sometimes it's better to think a little bit. I was going to say vaguely. That's not quite true. Bit more in a bit more of an open-ended approach before deciding what you're going to do. And again, part of the reason I gave out the Raspberry Pi 3s is so that you can get a handle on it and see if it's going to do what you think it's going to do. Right, and there's the use case diagram. Oh, you've updated it. Great, thank you. The only thing I'd say about having everybody as a project lead is it can lead to confusion. What I'd suggest is it's okay for people to take turns being project leader or doing the coding or 3D printing, but I'd suggest identifying a particular time period for each one to be the project lead, right? Otherwise you tend to trip over yourselves. Well, at least that's what I've experienced. Okay. So feasibility. I like that one person is going to be responsible for submissions. That makes it less likely that there's going to be confusion about whether something was submitted or not and when it was going to be submitted. So feasibility, for this particular project, there's a few things that come to mind, right? One of the things that I'm asking you to do, I think, did I make that available? Yeah, there we go. Right, so this is a sub rubric on the assignment. Let me just see that it's available in the appropriate place. So, project proposal, view rubric. Okay, so there are two, and the particular things that I'm looking for in the project description detail are the things you already know about, right? The shell statements and the use case diagram. The security team have done that already. I would also like you to think about the architecture diagram, right? And in particular for this one, I need to understand, I can see there's a drone is one particular hardware platform. I'm wondering whether that drone needs to talk to a PC or a desktop machine, or whether it's going to be completely able to work either by itself or in conjunction with a mobile phone app or something like that. Right, so that architecture diagram would tell me that the drone is going to communicate to a mobile phone app over Wi-Fi. Right, should be straightforward if that's all it is. But if the drone needs to talk to I'll call it a server, but it's a something like something bigger than a mobile phone, then that needs to be identified early rather than later. And then the other piece that's particularly important for this project is the power budget, right? You want to be able to have the drone fly for, I've forgotten what the number was, right? Minimum of 10 minutes. Right, that tells you something about how much power you need, particularly if you've got this drone and it's flying on electricity, on electrical power, and you're going to also have a Raspberry Pi running off the same battery. And 10 minutes is probably doable. And we'll just have to, like I said, I forgot in the last cohort to get them to talk about a power budget. I did it in the first cohort and it was quite useful. because we had some discussion about the sorts of things that you need to account for. Okay, I think that was that one. Right, so all of that sub-rubric is about the project description. The statement of need, as I said, needs to be researched. There needs to be some good backing. If you've found an existing product or project that already does something like what you're trying to do, you should reference it here. You should talk about it here. You should talk about why it doesn't do what you need to do. When you do that, make sure you reference it in the references section. Make sure you use an appropriate, encourage everybody to use is the IEEE citation style, right? So if we go here and just do that, and the Pittsburgh Library, but the actual one is this one. Right, IEEE reference guide. Let me just put that in the okay, and yeah. So the one that people tend to fall down on, if I can find it here, tends to be referencing URLs, right? Just putting the URL in the reference is not enough. You need to identify the author. Sometimes it's just the company that is hosting that particular URL, but oftentimes the author's name will be available on the web page, so use the author's name. Use the title, right? Just about any web page, right? This is a page that I go to, and if you add a bookmark, the name that's up here in the tab is what I consider to be the title of the web page, right? So use the title of the web page. The other thing is, if it is just a URL, if I can find it, if it's just a URL, make sure that you put the date that you last accessed it in the reference. Right? Sometimes there's well, URLs change, right? People change their websites and mix it up, and so you're better off giving as much information about it. The web page still may be available, just not at the URL that you give. So if somebody reading your document can do a Google search with the extra information that you've provided in the reference, like the title, like the date that you last accessed it, then that may be useful. They may just have to go to the Wayback Machine, right? I think it's archive.org, and that'll be able to show them maybe the website that you were talking about. if the website doesn't currently exist. Where are we? There we go. So I'm wondering if okay, we've got a fridge one. So let me have a look at that one. Sorry, before I go on, does anybody on the security team have any comment, or is there anything else you want to talk about? Michael or Bright? Kyle B?
No questions.
No? You okay? Okay.
Yep, I'm fine.
Good. Yeah, so I do like that you've, I think you got this from one of the, I do like that this is done on a weekly basis. So please try and think of what the tasks are on a weekly basis. The first draft, it's going to be a little nebulous, right? One of the things we're going to do is the first week back in second semester, you're going to revisit this plan, because some stuff will have been done, other stuff will not have been done, and the aim is to try and figure out. Now this document, this proposal, should be cohesive. And by that I mean, do I have a draw option here? I do, look at that. Right, so over here is a deliverable goal. You have shall statements, right? They are, at a high level, the goals. You have a deployment diagram. Those are related to your deliverables, right? For now, it's not going to be possible to slice the deliverables on the deployment diagram into things that you can deliver weekly, all right? But the aim is that that column should be connectable to either the shall statements or the deployment diagram, right? Or possibly the use case diagram, right? Those three things are the defining parts of what you're trying to achieve. And if the things you've got in your deliverable goal column don't help you achieve them, then they're not really a deliverable or goal, or you didn't get the shall statements, deployment diagram, and use case diagram right. So they need to be updated. They maybe need to be updated, right? One of the things I always, every project I've ever been on, and it's not quite the right numbers, but you have a requirements document at the beginning, but only 80% of it is right. The other 20% either you don't know about until you try and do some of the 80% you do know about, or something completely unknown comes up, and that contributes to the extra 20% of work that you've got to do while you're trying to generate the product. One thing that Professor Braverman, who is taking the Capstone 2 students now, he does a nice job of what I call traceability. And what I've just been talking about is traceability, right? Why are you doing this particular task? Well, it's because I have to do this particular shall statement. Why am I doing this particular task? Well, it's because I need to build this thing on the deployment diagram. It's because I need to implement this function on the use case diagram. And that connectivity, that traceability, is a way of telling whether you're done, right? If everything in your project description, the shall statements, the deployment diagram, and the use case diagram are all done, then that should mean that the project is finished, right? It's over. You've completed it. And having that traceability between the things you're doing and the things you need to produce is a good way of ensuring that nothing falls through the cracks. Like I said, there's still that 20% that maybe there's some uncertainty about, but the aim is to reduce that as the project moves forward. Okay, so let's have a look at the fridge document. I'll just download it. So let's have a look. Oh, we've got a statement of need. Right, so this is a good start. I would suggest you need to back it up with some references, right? I think I think this is a good start, but right, statements like this, staying up to date with food inventory can begin to promote a healthy lifestyle. Okay, I agree, but tell me an authority that tells you that. Right? Does the CDC tell you that? If so, find a link on the CDC's website and put it in the reference, and reference it here, right? Referencing in IEEE style would be like that, and then down in the reference list, no reference list, should be a reference list. That's okay. Like I said, I didn't make a template available earlier, so that's all right. Right, and then in the reference list we've got whatever the I'm sure I could type, it'd be wonderful. What's it, the 26th today? Right, that's the sort of information you need. The title, I don't know what the title would be. The other thing you can do is make that a numbered list. And then in here, hyperlink it. Ooh, for some reason it's not let's see if we can do Cross-reference, that's what it is. So it's a numbered item, paragraph number, Centre for Disease Control. So we insert that one. Right, so now I can click on that and it'll take me there. So try and do that. It's not really necessary, but I like using as much of the tools that the technology lets us do. Right, and then we've got the functional and non-functional requirements. Got the use case diagram. Right, so you need to come up with your who's going to do what, when. Right, so I would try and come up with a specific dollar figure, right? $100 range could go from $50 to $300, I don't know, right? Try and bring it to something a bit more specific. And yeah, I'd Samsung tablet. So I managed to get you one of these. That was free, but oh, you got a soldering kit. That's good. That's one thing I found with some of these the groups last semester is they didn't have the equipment to solder some of the connections up, and they needed to buy that as part of their budget. And again, that's good. Oh, is that when it is? Week 4 of August, huh? Good to see that you're taking my advice over the summer break. That's good. Okay. So that looks pretty good. There's a power budget. So one thing I'd suggest is seeing if you can figure out how much the camera plus Raspberry Pi is going to draw, so that you can figure out how big the battery has to be. Okay, anybody from the fridge group got any questions, comments, thoughts?
So,
No? Okay. So that's another thing about the statement of need. Try and tie it into the social aspect, the wider context, right? So I used to work for United Technologies, and the piece of United Technologies, I initially worked at the research centre, which talked to all the other pieces of UTC, but I moved into one of the business units after a couple of years, and the business unit I moved to was a place called UTC Fire and Security. That's no longer a business unit of Raytheon, but it's been part of it was moved into Otis Elevator, and part of it was moved into Carrier HVAC, and I think they call them themselves climate control and security, or parts of them do. And one of the things we did early on, in fact, while I was still at the research centre, is we did what's called a voice of the customer activity in trying to figure out, because UTC had just bought what was called Chubb Electronic Security, and that Chubb Electronic Security wasn't particularly big in the US, but it was very big, one of the biggest alarm monitoring companies up in Canada. So I went up to Canada a few times to do this voice of the customer activity, where we talked to small, medium and large customers of Chubb Toronto it was. We talked to the technicians. That was really fun. We went out on I went out on various calls with some of the Chubb technicians and talked to them and interviewed them and videoed some of them because we wanted to find out what the business did and what the research centre where I was at the time could help improve for them. And so there were all sorts of ideas. And one of the things we came across pretty quickly was that the call centre, the place, if your home gets broken into and you have a monitored alarm and that alarm goes off, it goes to a call centre. It goes to, in this case, it was Chubb's call centre. And the thing we came across really quickly was that 99.6, I think was the number, percent of the calls that the call centre dealt with were false alarms. Nothing to do with a home being broken into or a home catching on fire or a health emergency. It was all just about faulty equipment or some other sort of false alarm, false detections. So we looked at how we could improve that. It's a tough problem because a lot of the existing systems work for 15, 20 years. So it's not really viable to update the hardware very easily. That was one thing we thought we could improve the false alarm rates, but it's really hard to do. Sorry, bit of a tangent, particularly on home security, but try and tie what you're doing into the wider context, right? In the case of the home security piece, tie it into what is happening in security in the towns you're living in, right? I know I heard on the local radio yesterday, day before, there was over in Wethersfield and environs, there was a spate of, I think, 50 cars broken into, right? Maybe the home security drone could have provided more information about that. But try and make it context sensitive. For the fridge project, right? Health and healthy eating is a good thing to tie it to, but have some solid either papers or websites or information that you reference in order to back up your assertions. There are a lot of smart fridges on the market now. Research those to see whether they're doing some of the things you're suggesting, right? Yours is aimed at retrofitting to an existing fridge, so that it's more accessible to people. I think I told you the fridge I have at home came with the house that I bought, and I bought the house 17 years ago. It's still going strong. It's probably going to break now that I've said that, but it's been going
Fingers
for
crossed.
yeah, exactly. Um, okay. Do we have anything from the garage group? Want me
I have some stuff. I mean, it's basically riddled with comments at this point.
that
'Cause
that
I have.
like the aim is not to have this finished today. The aim was just to have be able to have something to talk about, and then to move it forward. So if you want to, I don't know, do you want to share your screen? Maybe if I stop sharing.
I can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
You can keep sharing your screen. I'll just add it on, and people can join in.
okay.
Screens. Screen 2. It's really ugly. Just a warning.
It's okay. So watch stream.
Yeah.
Let me just move that. Maybe. Can I move it?
So something that I do so I can see both of them is there's like a 3-dot thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can do that. But if you want to see both of them, you can hit the show non-video participants up in the top right in the little 3-dot thing.
Oh, I see.
And it'll only show people who are showing video. And then if you go into grid view, it'll show them both at once.
Okay, that's all right. I'll just go with. I just want to make put this in the full video. So I think if I do that, that'll do what I want. There we go. Okay, so yeah.
I took a shot at the statement of need and the executive summary. I didn't know totally what they needed, but I mean, I had an idea obviously through the example and through the rubric, but
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get to these yet. Functional requirements and stuff. I wanted to work with my group, kind of go over it before I went through that stuff,
Yep. Yep. That looks good.
and then I have to update that, but.
Yeah. So if you think there are already products available, make sure you figure them out, right, and reference them in this document. Okay, so it's and see if you can find some technical specs on them. Maybe it's available on their website. Maybe it's it's one of the things you do when you're developing a product is you try to you try to look at what competitors are doing, right? And provided all of the information from your competitors was acquired legally,
Yeah, I don't think
it's-
that's a problem.
right? It's fine, right? And competitors give you this information. It's all in their marketing material, right? They want to sell their stuff, so a lot of it is available. Sometimes you even provided they haven't put a clause in their contract of sale that forbids reverse engineering, but you can still have a look at that. You can certainly buy that product and use it to see what you want to do.
Yeah, I think it was like an app that allowed you to reserve spaces in certain areas or something. So it was like
Ah.
kind of similar, but it wasn't like exactly the same.
Okay.
Concept was similar.
Yep, that's okay. Again, but try and reference it and say what's similar and what's different.
Okay.
Okay.
And then this I haven't even gotten to.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
got
That.
done with stuff.
Yeah. That one. So as far as the schedule is concerned, and I'll talk a bit more about this after Easter. What I'd like to do with the schedule is to actually use it to manage the project, right? And I don't know if any of you have done a project management course. I assume you've done something.
Yep.
But there's an approach called EVMS, Earned Value Management System, that allows you to effectively assign a value to everything in the task list, and then when you finish a task, you acquire that value. And what you can do is, if you've got the schedule like this, and you've got the task list, and you've got the assigned value, the planned value for each of the tasks, then you can look at how the plan, this schedule, tells you you're going to increase value in the product. And by the end of it, you should have acquired all the value. But this is the plan, this particular one. What you do when you start executing the plan is you don't deliver on time. All right, so instead of finalizing the proposal in April, we're still in May, for example, when we do it. So that means that your plan and your actuals differ. And if you use this EVMS approach, then that difference will show up in the metrics that EVMS uses. The metrics that it uses are a thing called a cost performance index and a schedule performance index, CPI and SPI. And it's just a way to calculate how you're doing. And I would like to try and use that in second semester. Probably we might try it in the second half of this semester, but I would definitely like to try and use it and be a bit more systematic about saying how well we're doing project-wise by using those techniques. Okay, do you have any questions for me about this?
Not about this per se, but you said that some of the Raspberry Pis are still available, the zeros.
The zeros, yeah, I've got 3 of those.
Okay. Do you want me to just send you an email for one?
Yeah, if you want. I can. I can. What I did with the Raspberry Pi 3s is I just posted them out to the other one each to the other 2 groups.
Okay.
And I can do that again. I probably won't be able to get to it until Monday, but
That's
okay. Well, thank you for that. Let me
Thank you.
see where my screen got to. Let's make that smaller and move it back to my other actual screen. Where have we got to? There we go. Okay, so I think you all, that just based on what we just saw then, I think you all have a pretty good idea of what's needed. So I'm not going to go through the project proposal rubric again. I think if you have any questions, feel free to just drop the questions into Discord, and I'll maybe put, if you think the whole class can benefit from the answer, maybe put it into the capstone discussion chat. But if you think it's a bit too project specific, then just one of your individual project chat or text lines. So that's the project proposal, and this isn't the rubric I'm going to be using for the proposal presentation. but it's a checklist of the things that you should be looking at doing during your presentations. Unfortunately, I'm not going to have we're not going to have another class between now and when you do your presentations, right? So I miss that connection. So the things that I'm going to be looking for are that you introduce your team members, right? And one thing that's often one thing we're trying to do with the capstone project is to help you figure out how to work in a team, right? And making it clear who is on the team at the beginning of the presentation is a good thing. I think it's not actually in this list, but one of the things I look for in the presentation is that the presentation duties are roughly equally shared amongst the team members. Now, if you have a slide deck, it's probably only one person is going to be able to present that slide deck, and that's okay. But the people who speak to each slide should be roughly divided equally amongst the team members. This is what I was talking about in the motivation piece, right? Support why you think it's a good idea. There's bound to be stuff out there, but make a logical argument for why you're doing what you're doing. If there is something out there that does something like what you're doing, why are you different? Right? What's differentiating you from everybody else? What are the objectives of what you're doing? This could be at a high level, like the security group had a single sentence statement about what the objective was, and that was a good statement. But maybe you want to be a little bit more granular, not too much more, right? Maybe 2 or 3 more objectives. And then you need to be able to explain how you're going to achieve those objectives, or at least think you're going to achieve those objectives. And then this is something that's always a problem in most projects, and that is, how do you know when you're done? Right? What are you evaluating? What's the objective? What are the criteria? And how do you know when you've met that criterion? I think we've talked about roles. We've talked about a budget. We've talked about the schedule. And then you should sum up at the end. One of the things I like to say as far as teaching is concerned, you've got to say things 3 times, right? You've got to tell them what you're going to tell them, you've got to tell them, and then you've got to tell them what you told them. And this item 10 down the bottom is telling the audience what you told them already, right? The introduction is tell them what you're going to tell them. Again, it's not the whole thing, but it should be a short summary. And then the rest of the presentation is the tell them piece, the detail of the tell them piece. And then that item 10 at the bottom is tell them what you told them. And I don't think I have anything more. Don't worry too much about this right? The main thing I want from financial is the budget. And technical feasibility, do think about ethical concerns. Do think about one thing that you really should think about here is the power budget. And that's actually something that I need to do. I will post some examples of the power budget from my 2019 class, I think it was. I haven't given you any examples. I should do that. And that's the requirements. And yeah, unless anybody has any questions for me, I don't have anything more to talk about today. 2 weeks' time, we'll get everybody together, and I want each team to make their presentation. Each presentation should be around about 20 minutes, maybe, and then maybe a little bit of extra time for questions. So that, and try, if you can, to practice the presentation, because sometimes I get teams who present everything in 5 minutes, which is obviously a little cutting it a little short, and sometimes I get teams who take an hour, or would take an hour if I let them go without cutting them short after 20 or 25 minutes. Right, so try and fit into around about that 20-minute time frame. Okay. So, like I said, no class next week. Have a chocolate bunny, or if you don't like chocolate, maybe have a sugar bunny or something.
So I don't need to include. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I don't need to include the financial feasibility at all in the project proposal, or.
If you've done something, that might be interesting to see. But the main aim for this is to do a as detailed a budget as you can, so we know what you need to buy. And just actually, that reminds me, you will be able, each team will be able to spend about $150 through through Central. And but be aware that the best way to get stuff through Central is from Amazon. It is possible to get it from other places, but Amazon is by far the easiest. Okay, does that answer the question?
Yep, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so if I realise we're cutting it a little early, but if nobody has any questions, let's leave it there. Feel free to ping me via Discord if you have any questions. I'm in the middle of midterms, so my time is not my own, but I will try and make some time available. You may not be able, if you try my general consultation line, you may not be able to get a time, but ping me via Discord and I'll do what I can to answer any questions. Okay, so let's leave it there. Thank you very much for your time.
Have a good one.
Yep, you too.
I'll give you a ring when I get my package of the Raspberry Pi.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Just let me know. It should be yeah. I should be able to see it on those tracking links that I sent Anthony.
Yeah, I never actually clicked on it, but I'll definitely take a look at that.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Have a good weekend.
Yeah, you too. Bye bye.